start when you start. Dear ladies and gentlemen of the board, my name is Amanda Kale. I am an EL teacher at Margaret Allen Middle Prep. When you say use your teacher voice, it means to speak loudly and authoritatively to bring order back to chaos. I'm here today, along with my fellow teachers, using my voice to do just that. What is the chaos I'm talking about? It has a name. It's high-stakes testing. It is the chaos created by tests that are so difficult that they are developmentally inappropriate, written by people who do not understand the basics of learning and child development, especially in regards to English language learners and exceptional education students. The chaos created by the constant onslaught of state, district, and principal-mandated tests in order to prepare for 10 Ready and TCAP, which disrupt class schedules every day for weeks on end, all year round. The chaos created when subjects dearest to many students' hearts, music, art, world languages, and physical education are pushed aside, or when elementary schools neglect foundational instruction in science and social studies because of the heavy emphasis on the testable subjects, math and reading. The chaos created when teachers are forced to spend all of their planning time analyzing largely useless data collected by poorly written and developmentally inappropriate tests, and when we label our students as basic and below basic, when in fact it's the test's fault for not differentiating assessment in a way that is fair and appropriate to all our many different learners. The chaos created by the overwhelming stress and demoralization of teachers who are evaluated and berated for failing test scores when they know it is tests that have failed their students, or the constant pressure on principals that gives them little choice but to turn their schools into testing boot camps. The chaos created by students who act out because of disrupted schedules, boring test prep, a constantly revolving door of demoralized, stressed out teachers, and looming tests that they have no hope of passing, or who need desperately to talk to a guidance counselor, but the guidance counselor is too busy being a testing coordinator. The chaos created by tests that are so shrouded in secrecy that no one can review the test questions for quality, and teachers can't complain when we find errors, and no one seems to understand before the test how the scores will be tabulated. I'm asking you to join me and other teacher voices to end this chaos. Find out how many tests are being given redundantly. Plan for how instructional time will be protected. Let's think about ending district benchmarks. Let's bring some order back to this chaos. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Adam Knight. I'm a reading and language teacher at East Middle Magnet. I'm going to try and make this argument in 3 minutes. We'll see. So we need a paradigm shift in how we see and utilize standardized tests. Their overall effectiveness and importance in education must be re-examined. Analyze, synthesize, create, lifelong learner. These are all words that we as educators value most. This is where the value in education lies. In a democratic society, the goal of education is to help develop motivated citizens that are capable of thinking critically about and devising solutions to societal structures and problems, who are able to dissent in a meaningful way, who are empathetic to those around them and learn to work together to build a better community, a better country, and a better world. Standardized tests are antithetical to these aims. Their effect is memorization, not critical examination, assimilation, not dissent, apathy, not motivation, and individual, not collective purpose. High-stakes standardized testing is also destructive to our most delicate population, students of color and the socioeconomically disadvantaged. Studies have shown time and time again that the largest determining factor in standardized test scores is poverty. Combined with this is the fact that these tests, designed by disconnected think tanks with a clear profit motive, are not culturally sensitive or relative to many of our students from differing backgrounds. Students are given tests that by design are not capable of providing a fair assessment of their capabilities. These tests are then used to place students into a hierarchy of abilities. Teachers are then encouraged to discuss where the student falls in the current flawed hierarchy with that student in individual data chats. Students internalize that they are, to use some catchphrases, tier 3, below basic, basic. They hear these terms so often and so seriously that they begin to believe that they are below basic people. This is from where the apathy comes. They feel as though they've been relegated to below basic person status and there is no escape. And ultimately, there is no escape from this status because the test used to raise them from that place in the hierarchy is weighted against them. This is an impoverished education, a self-fulfilling prophecy that is destructive to our most vulnerable communities. We have to refuse to stand for this as parents, as educators, and as a community. The affluent are not educated this way. Last year, I was bogged down with testing and disgusted. I decided to call the University Lab School in Chicago, and this school was developed from the ideas of educational philosopher John Dewey and not from the ideas of a corporate think tank. This is where many of the children of the affluent and powerful attend, including Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel's children. I asked a simple question: how often do you give standardized tests to your students? And their answer was never. Now, this is simple yet profound. We must demand the education of the affluent. We must develop this education in our community in Nashville. We have to deny this impoverished education. We are educators and craftsmen. We work to inspire, to motivate, to breed curiosity and creativity and imagination. We must reject the things that are destructive to these ends, and we must develop new tools to attend our ambitions of illuminating the beautiful minds that will guide us and themselves in the not-so-distant future.
Very good.
I would like to give you guys a seat work assignment, and you can just pass it through and look at this is our benchmark test, 4th grade, and you would look at that and see if you can figure out that answer for me, please. Thank you. My name is Sherry Martin, and I teach 4th grade at Neely's Bend Elementary School, and I'm here to use my teacher voice. You know, in the past, if someone would ask me what I do in metro schools, I would eagerly respond by saying, I teach 4th grade. But now I feel like I'm not wearing this shirt sincerely because I don't feel like I teach anymore. I feel like I'm an interventionist. Teaching 4th grade means now that I have students who are 2 grade levels below that I'm expected to move up to grade level plus teach the 4th grade standards. You're looking at a benchmark test that is totally flawed. The standards are not matching the pacing gap that the system put out for us to use. It's ridiculous. However, the reality is, again, I wear many hats. Thanks to our RTI2, I now spend a portion of the day in intervention. Yes, I'm reteaching foundational skills that should have been mastered before the student entered my 4th grade classroom. In the past, a teacher was given the task to show 1 year's growth. Now I'm expected to show 1, 2, 3, and 4. And at the same time, we have no time to teach because we are testing. Let me just give you a rundown of the time-consuming assessments that I have personally given August through October. This is August. TLAs, Ames Web Comp, Ames Web MCAP, Ames Web Maze, Ames Web WE, DSA, which consists of up to 4 25-word spelling tests, depending on how far the student gets on that level. September, Ames Web Part 2, Vanderbilt testing, 10 Ready Benchmark 1, 35 to 45 minutes, which again is very flawed. iReady Reading Diagnostic, 45 minutes. iReady Math Diagnostic, 45 minutes. District Benchmark Test, 1 hour. October, District Benchmark Test, 1 hour. Missed practice test, 4 days. And I'm going to break that down. ELA, 2 hours and 55 minutes. Math, 2 hours and 30 minutes. Social studies, 2 hours and 20 minutes. Science, 1 hour. Next up, which our kids took today, the STEP survey. This list doesn't include the teacher-made tests that are given to show true progress. So I pose the question, when do I have time to teach authentically? Give teachers back control of their classroom.
Thank you, Ms.
for their
Martin.
students. Thank you.
Next, we have Rosemary Wade, Catherine Pratt, and Eric Huth.
Good afternoon. My name is Suzanne Diaz, and I teach English language learners at Margaret Allen Middle Prep. All of my students are brand new to the United States. In fact, I just got one last week from Egypt, and most of them have been here between 4 and 10 months, and they have little to no English at all. Imagine what the immediate challenges are before them, and testing should not be one of them. Let me say that again. Testing should not be one of them. I'm here today to speak to you specifically about how testing negatively impacts my students. Number one, instruction time is lost. The time taken for testing is time away from valuable, specialized instruction that the ELs desperately need. 2, schedules are disrupted. Routine is the one constant that these students rely on to make sense of their new reality. And with all the testing that's done, that daily routine gets backburnered. My routine is also disrupted as I am pulled to give testing accommodations. 3, testing demoralizes, frustrates, and steals any shred of confidence that a new learner might have gained. Research tells us that students can be expected to learn basic social language in approximately 1 to 3 years. We call this the language of the playground. Academic language, however, takes more like 5 to 7 years to acquire, and longer if you have not received any formal language in your home country or if you are illiterate in your native language. So I say if the basic function of testing is to give performance feedback to both student and teacher for the purpose of identifying those gaps in learning, I would raise the question, does this purpose transfer to ELL learners? I assert that it does not. The performance feedback that the EL learners receive feels devastating. It feels unfair. Being told that you are below basic for something that you cannot even comprehend, that feels rotten. It just feels so disheartening. Why would a non-native speaker be evaluated on the same level that a native speaker is? I believe we, as native English speakers, we'd be hard-pressed to achieve above below basic on a standardized test in Arabic. And what would that score reveal anyway? I say nothing more than the fact that you don't know Arabic, but your Arabic teacher would know that about you. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Next,
much.
please.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Pratt. I come to you today as both a Metro parent and as an elementary music teacher. I consider myself very blessed to be a part of the Metro Music Department. Music teachers here are valued, well-funded, and are largely evaluated on the performance of our students using a fair and balanced portfolio assessment. We have the opportunity to develop lessons based on appropriate standards and, in turn, give appropriate assessments. My colleagues in the classroom, unfortunately, do not share these same professional experiences. They have been stripped of their ability to make appropriate educational and developmental decisions in their classrooms. They have been robbed of the joy of teaching. They have been reduced to data trackers, test preparers, drill the skill robots, and they are miserable. My school recently administered the MIS test. It's completely computerized. We have never had a technology class in my school. Many of our students have very little experience on computers. They're now being asked to navigate split screens with text on one side and answers on the other. They have to scroll up and down to view answer choices because they're not all visible at once. They can only see a small section of the paragraph that they have to refer to answer these questions. We had students that were in tears. Students were asked to compose essay answers, typing to answer writing prompts. When a teacher saw one of our hardest working students frozen in his chair staring at his keyboard, he approached the student to see what was wrong. The student couldn't figure out how to type a question mark. He had lost precious time, was very upset. The laptop carts given to our schools are insufficient. They're constantly shutting down as the students are working, causing great frustration to teachers and students. Many classes were days behind on the MIS test due to technology failures. The entire experience was a nightmare, and to put the icing on the cake, after the test was administered, teachers were told that if they wanted the results, they had to grade the tests themselves. At this point, I'll remind you that the results from Tennessee Ready determine who is eligible for our magnet schools. We are clearly excluding children that are economically disadvantaged by using computerized testing. We love the word data, so why aren't we using the data from research that tells us our expectations for our youngest students, expectations that are driven by how we test, are developmentally inappropriate? The experiences that these children need at 5, 6, and 7 years old come from time to play, time to problem solve within their peer group, time to have sensory experiences, and time for fine motor development. We want all our students to succeed in school, but in our efforts to do so, we've created a generation of children that hate school, that experience failure on a daily basis, and that are socially unequipped to function in many situations. These children then become our behavior problems, the kids that we have to try to manage every day so that we can try to reach the next benchmark. These are the kids that would rather be the bad kids than the dumb kids, and if you think that's melodramatic, go into a school and have an honest conversation with a first grader. Ask them if they think they're smart. Many of their answers will break your heart. We have insurmountable challenges in this district. However, the culture of testing is working against us.
Eric Huth.
Dr. Gentry, Ms. Shepard, members of the Board of Education, Mr. Henson. I'm here to outline some issues impacting teacher retention, but obviously I'm going to skip testing as I think that's being covered by others this evening. First, MNEA appreciates the efforts of the district to hear directly from teachers. However, several teachers who participated in the focus groups have expressed concerns that while much of what they said in those meetings may have been captured in the printed summary, the urgency of their concerns was not conveyed. In case you're not aware, MNPS has significantly reduced planning time this year over previous years. Apparently, individuals in the Human Capital Division decided an hour of planning time per day was too much, so they cut teacher planning time in half to set it at the state minimum of 2.5 hours per week, less than it's ever been in the entire time I've taught in metro schools. Many schools force teachers to attend professional learning community meetings to learn about strategies and other procedures, even if the teacher is already well schooled on the issues presented. In fact, some teachers report to me that they are required to attend PLCs even when they can substantiate that they have received ample training on the topic at hand. PLCs should be about professionals working collaboratively together to meet each other's needs and those of the students they serve. PLCs shouldn't be about meeting for meeting's sake. Teachers continue to tell us at MNEA that they are not being appropriately compensated for covering classes when no substitute is provided, and no substitute is provided quite frequently. Often, bookkeepers simply don't know how to process the payments, but sometimes there is intentionality. MNPS needs to pay every employee what she's owed, not just the employees that MNPS chooses to pay appropriately. The teacher compensation plan and the practice of freezing step raises is causing many teachers to consider other employment options. I had one teacher call me just last week to ask when she would ever get a step raise. What would you tell her? When she moves to Cincinnati? Never? I don't know. Principal autonomy in this culture of fear and intimidation has created a sense of helplessness among our teachers. MNPS needs to make a cultural shift where administrators abandon strategies like fear, intimidation, marginalization, entrapment, and they embrace collaboration, trust, and
Seth
empowerment.
Harris,
Thank
Mary
you.
Holden, and Molly Handler.
Okay. All right. I typically watch these meetings on my laptop at home, and I have to say you are all much larger in person. My name is Seth Harris, and I'm a third grade teacher at the Great School of Inglewood Elementary. Last year, as you probably know, Inglewood was about to be handed over to KIPP based on the results of TCAP over numerous years, only to be saved by the actions of a quick-acting and deeply involved community group. But that was a single year. And now with TCAP gone, we have the even greater and more imposing unknown of TN Ready, a test that takes up an even larger chunk of our calendar and continues to interrupt quality instruction so that we can guess how students will perform. But there's so much that does not get assessed, so much that happens that is not quantitative and never will be, so much that is infinitely more valuable to shaping a child's heart and mind than tests and related prep. In my class, I have worked with students to develop conflict resolution skills, and it is working, but that won't be on the test. In my class, I run a highly rigorous writer's workshop, and my students are composing research reports on topics as varied as jellyfish, how candy is made, and types of braids for African American hair, but that won't be on the test. I have students going to related arts classes in their homes using the word schema and in the correct context, but that won't be on the test. I have students reading, dissecting, and writing over articles about gun laws in our country, chronic food waste, the economic plight of Puerto Rico, and the economic boom in Senegal, among many, many other topics, but that won't be on the test. I have little girls reading about the women's suffrage movement and suddenly stating out loud, "My mom never votes," as the gears in their minds turn and they ask more questions about the voting process, but that won't be on the test. I have a student stating, "I love history," and it brings tears to my eyes. I have students becoming aware of and engaged in their world at this moment with an understanding of how we got here, but that won't be on the test. In my classroom, I have students that are enthusiastic, joyful, engaged, and craving to learn more. On days we have tests related to the high-stakes end-of-year assessments, these same students are despondent, disengaged, angry, crying, and overall upset about this test that seems to have nothing to do with them. However, the results will inevitably come back that these students are labeled basic or below basic. And let me make this clear, my students are in no way basic or below basic. They are thoughtful, contemplative young people who want to know about the world. It is the system as it stands today that is inadequate in seeing how extraordinary they truly are. Well, what does this mean? That we need to develop an entirely new way of assessing that is relevant and meaningful. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to speaking to you again very, very soon.
Good evening. My name is Mary Holden. I'm using my teacher voice tonight as a high school teacher for the past 15 years, including 1 year in Metro, though I do not currently work here. I'm also the parent of a second grader at Granbury Elementary School. We have great teachers in MNPS. Despite what we hear in the media and even on occasion from our own communications department, our public schools are not failing. Dedicated teachers and students are working hard every day in spite of all the negativity, lack of resources, threats, and mandates placed on them. There are many successes happening here. However, a great number of teachers are scared to speak up about issues that affect them and their students. From my own experience here and from listening to teachers, there is most definitely a pervasive culture of fear. It's one of the reasons I quit. Anyone in central office who denies that is simply not paying attention. Teachers are afraid to speak up about their concerns for fear of retaliation. But here's what I've heard from teachers, and for whom I'm speaking tonight. There are too many mandates placed on them from central office, too much emphasis on testing, too many administrators who don't know what they're doing, don't trust teachers to do their jobs, or don't treat teachers professionally, instead lead by fear. Some administrators still require the use of data walls, a practice that is harmful and shameful to children. There's too much emphasis on data for data's sake, and too much data that teachers are required to collect, wasting time that could be used to plan instruction. These are children, not data points. Another concern is the number of tests given and the amount of instruction time that is lost that you've heard about tonight. Weekly RTI tests, school benchmarks, district benchmarks, practice tests for TN Ready, and then there's TN Ready. Don't even get me started on TN Ready. We are on assessment overload. The only meaningful assessment is the ones that teachers create in their classroom based on real student learning. Everything else is meaningless. I don't care about high-stakes standardized test scores. The good news is that MNPS can fix all these issues. The district could build up our struggling schools, provide extra resources and staff members to our struggling, not failing schools, but our struggling schools. Do a better job communicating successes that don't have anything to do with test scores. MNPS could alleviate a lot of the pressure on teachers by cutting back on some of these mandates. Trust teachers and let them teach. MNPS could work hard to get rid of this culture of fear. I was very pleased that Mr. Henson spoke about what he's doing to alleviate this. I hope that continues. Teachers need to feel like they are valued and that they can speak out without fear. Finally, MNPS could take the lead in Tennessee, like states like Vermont are doing, speaking out against standardized testing, fighting back at the state level. We know that the use of high-stakes tests are meaningless and the misuse of data is hurting our kids. We could encourage students and parents and teachers to speak up to the state legislature. We could galvanize parents to refuse the tests. My daughter, who's going to be in 3rd grade next year, is already dreading it. She comes home saying, in 3rd grade, the library closes. In 3rd grade, we have to take tests. Mommy, I don't want to be in 3rd grade.
Thank you so much,
we need to
Ms.
change
Holden.
that.
Molly Handler.
My name's Molly. I teach 4th grade in the Maplewood cluster. I've taught there and lived there for the past 10 years, and I care very deeply about my neighborhood and the students and families who live there. Standards-based learning does not really align with the way kids think and the way they learn. Standards-based testing assumes that kids learn in a linear, stair-step fashion, which would follow like this. Teacher knows the assessment. Teacher plans lessons for mastery of such an assessment. Student learns through the progression of such lessons. Student takes assessment to indicate where the teacher failed to teach correctly. Begin again. Historical theories of teaching and learning from greats such as Piaget and Vygotsky suggest that childhood and brain development play a much larger role. The zone of proximal development suggests that kids aren't going to understand a concept until they are developmentally ready. It doesn't matter how good the teacher is. It doesn't matter how the information is presented. Effective teaching and learning occurs in a much more cyclical manner and does not align well to standardized testing and teaching practices. Such standardized practices, to me, have always felt discrete and separate from the real work of teaching and learning. However, they have become increasingly more disruptive to such practices. We have become so micromanaged with various forms of standardized testing that it is increasingly difficult to develop the true cyclical flow of teaching and allowing kids to learn. The assumption that I, as a teacher, will present a concept during a set number of days and then students will take a test to prove that I've done my job well or poorly is flawed. Learning is cyclical and does not exist in a stair-step fashion. Just because I've explicitly taught a concept does not mean all children are ready to understand that concept at that moment. And it doesn't mean that I nor they have done something wrong. My job as a teacher is to continuously re-expose them to that concept in different ways and with different applications throughout the year. So when they are ready to understand it, I'm presenting them with the information. This is a teaching practice called spiraling. Depending on where a child is in their development, sometimes they need to go backwards before they go forwards. Sometimes they're only ready to understand a previously taught concept in the context of a new concept. Sometimes they simply need to step away from a concept for a while and return to it a bit later. It is fine to have common topics taught at common times during the year and during a child's school career. Yet what is very problematic for me this year is that there seem to be two separate tracks of teaching. The first is authentic, differentiated teaching and learning that allows for different kids to arrive into their understanding of concepts in different ways and at different times. The second is a rigid, inauthentic, and standardized process that consists of teach, test, criticize, and punish. This creates a very harmful culture for both students and teachers. I used to be able to protect my students from this, but have found it increasingly difficult to continue to do so. Over-testing is rendering it quite impossible to teach in the way that I know is right.
Thank you so much, Ms. Handler.